Hello and welcome back to the second part of this two-part review looking at budget Lidl's whiskies. So we've already looked at the 3-year-old Queen Margot, and now that I've had sufficient chance to get the taste of it out of my mouth, why don't we have a look at the Glen Orchy 5-year-old blended malt. So screw top again, 40%, probably coloured, almost certainly chill filtered. Does come in a rather nice triangular bottle, so quite reminiscent of Glenfiddich and Grant's, that sort of thing. As to the liquid inside the bottle, just like the Queen Margot, which we know is essentially made by White and Mackay, we know that the Glen Orchy blended malt is made by Macleod. So if you were going to taste two whiskies blind, one was made by White and Mackay and the other was made by Macleod, which would you go for? Get a little bit of this in the glass and do some nosing and tasting. It's got to be better than an E, hasn't it? Pro tip, if you look at how much has gone from the bottle of this one, that might tell you something, bearing in mind that the Queen Margot, my tasting before I started this video, there's not much gone. On the nose, Glen Orchy 5-year-old blended malt Scotch whisky. That's, after the Queen Margot, that's the best smelling thing ever. It's actually a really nice nose. Joking aside, this really does smell quite nice. It's interesting, this is not a cheap whiskey, and as soon as I nosed this, the first thing I got was a strong farmy note. There's actually some peat in there. And I wouldn't be surprised, being Macleod, if that was probably some Kalila peat. And it's not a peat bomb, but there's definitely a farmy, cowsheds, peaty, farmy aroma in there, and it's really quite nice. And there's also a big, intense hit of sweet and sour fruit. I'm talking things like green gages and gooseberries, and also some rather sour, unripe plums, things like that. And it's all quite sugary as well. It's a really nice nose. Yeah, definitely a hint of peat in there, and a really nice clean and sharp nose aside from that farmy peatiness, with some lovely notes of like tropical squash drink, like a diluted squash drink that you buy in concentrated form and then water down at home, or possibly Lilt. I don't know how many people around the world know what that is, but it's a soft drink, at least here in the UK, which is tropical flavoured, grapefruit, pineapple, things like that. And I'm getting those sort of notes in the nose of this Glen Orchy 5-year-old blended malt. Also getting a really nice, grassy, gristy maltiness to this whiskey. So it's definitely complex, it's got a lot of flavour, a lot of different flavours. It's a huge step up from the Queen Margot 3-year-old, and so far, I think this is a really nice whiskey. So let's see how it tastes. So again, on the palate, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is a really cheap whiskey, but it's not cheaply made. It's not budget in terms of quality. I have no problem spending my own money on this one, and to be honest, I've had a couple of bottles of this in the past over the years, and I'll buy it again. I do have to think that in terms of quality, how does this compare to the Ben Bracken 12-year-old that you can get from Lidl? I haven't actually seen Ben Bracken 12-year-old in Lidl for quite a while. I'm not sure if it's been discontinued, but that was always a good one. Again, that was a blended malt, so a similar thing to the Glen Orchy, but had a 12-year-old age statement on it. I'm not sure if they've maybe dropped that one because it's a little bit more expensive to produce and gone with this one. I don't have a problem with that at all. From what I remember, I'd say that this 5-year-old Glen Orchy is every bit as good, possibly better, than the 12-year-old Ben Bracken from Lidl. So I have no problem buying this over the 12-year-old Ben Bracken. Just out of interest, let me know in the comments if Ben Bracken is still available where you are, or if you remember buying it back in the day. Let's have another taste. There's a really pleasant lemoniness to this whiskey, and I admit that I am a fan of slightly spirity whiskies that have a little bit of a lemon theme going through the palate. I do like that. And the lemon in this one, it's a dry, slightly musty lemoniness, and it's a little bit similar to sort of lemon squash that you might buy from supermarkets. There's also a little bit of a vanilla, grainy cereal note going on in this, and a little bit of that sour, unripe fruit note that I was getting on the nose. As for the finish, it's medium, maybe medium short, but this is very cheap whiskey. And the dominant flavours in the finish, I'd say, are that maltiness and those sweet and sour fruit juice notes. The only criticism that I can really level at this whiskey, apart from the fact that it's 40%, is really that there's just a touch of harsh spiritiness right on the end of the very late palate, really in the late finish. But that's really it. This is a very good whiskey. I would say that this bottle is, I think, a little bit, that slight harsh note towards the end of the finish possibly wasn't there in bottles that I bought a few years ago, but it's very hard to say. And to be honest, this is still a really good whiskey. It's worth every penny. And if I was going to compare this to anything, and this should come as a ringing endorsement, I'd say that it's actually not that far off Johnnie Walker Green Label. They're both blended malts. They both have a lovely malty, sweet and sour fruitiness to the profile. I would say that this is not as good as Johnnie Walker Green Label, but it's a perfectly acceptable cheap substitute for it, and it's a great whiskey in its own right. I'm going to give this one a B-. Lovely. So I did say that I was going to do a head-to-head at the end of this video with the 3-year-old Queen Margot and the 5-year-old Glen Orchy, but if you've been watching these two videos, you probably agree with me that there's really not much point, because this absolutely blows away the Queen Margot. This is a whiskey that's well worth buying. The Queen Margot isn't, just leave it alone. Oh, Queen Margot. What went wrong? Who is Queen Margot, by the way? If you know who Queen Margot is, let me know in the comments, because I have no idea. But I imagine that she's probably quite pissed off having that named after her. Oh, what am I going to do next? No idea. I have to check my whiskey review schedule. But I just hope it's better than Queen Margot. I'm sure we'll be fine. Cheers.